One morning, everything changed. And from that moment on, my life was no longer mine. What happened at the end changed me forever. The rain hadn't let up in 3 days, and the morning it all began felt no different. I'd just taken the trash out, shivering under the porch overhang, when I saw it, tucked halfway beneath a soggy pizza box like it had something to hide. A gift box, pale blue, ribbon damp and sagging. I pulled it out, curious. The label read, "To Enrico," written in Ashley's unmistakable handwriting. She always curled her Y's like musical notes. Underneath was a sticky note, half peeled and warped from the moisture, but the words still clear as glass. Last night was everything I dreamed. This is just the beginning. Love always. A. I didn't move for a while. My hand stayed on the box, my breath rising in clouds. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just confused. Just trying to breathe through the wave of something sharp scraping against the inside of my ribs. I shoved the box deeper into the trash, sealed the bin, and walked inside like nothing had happened. Ashley was upstairs curling her hair. She asked if I wanted coffee. I said sure. That afternoon when she left for work, I waited 10 minutes before pulling out her old laptop from the storage bench in the hall. It still had the sticker of a pink llama on it. I plugged it in, powered it up, and cracked the password in 3 tries. Her old dog's name, of course. Inside, I found what I was looking for far too easily. A folder labeled Therapy Notes held no charts or schedules. Just Word documents, some dated weeks, others months back, all saved as drafts, never sent, never printed. They were love letters. Each began with Enrico, as if she were still learning his name with her fingers. I read a few lines, just enough to know what they were, then closed the lid before I hurled the thing across the room. My hands shook the whole drive to her office party that evening, but I didn't go in. Instead, I parked across the street under a dying elm tree. Engine off, camera ready. I watched through the windshield as people laughed and drank through tall windows. I saw her. I saw him. Taller than me, olive skin, too white of a smile. She was in his arms when he kissed her. The flash of my camera shutter echoed in my ears even though I took the photo from inside the car. I only took one. I didn't need more. On the drive home, I didn't speak. Not to myself, not to the empty car. I just clutched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. When I got back, I went straight to the bedroom, grabbed the small lockbox from our closet, and cracked the cheap latch open with a flathead. Her diary was inside, wrapped in a silk scarf like some treasured relic. I sat on the bed and read it all. She detailed their first meeting at a workshop, drinks after the second seminar. The hotel stay, she told me, was just a quick work trip. Every word sliced deeper, like she was narrating the downfall of our life together in cursive. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up printing receipts, making notes. By dawn, I had installed a camera in the living room, hidden inside a gutted speaker shell. I added a second one tucked in the bookshelf across from our bedroom. They were small, motion activated, and fed into my phone. It took only 2 days. I was in the garage changing the oil when I saw the notification. I tapped it open and saw Ashley laughing, unlocking the door and stepping in with Enrico. I knew it was him. I watched them on the screen as they moved toward the hallway. I set the wrench down slowly and stepped outside, pacing up and down the driveway with a heart so loud it felt like a drum behind my ribs. Later that night, when the house was quiet and she was asleep, I took the wedding photo off the wall. It was the one we took beneath the birch tree outside the chapel, my hair too short, her lipstick slightly smudged. I stared at it for a long time before tossing it into the fire pit in the backyard and watching it curl into ash. Then I went back inside, pulled every family photo from the hallway, and sat on the cold tile floor with a pair of scissors. I cut my face out of each one. It wasn't rage, it was erasure. I didn't want my son finding these photos someday and asking, "Who was that man?" The next morning, Ashley mentioned the thermostat acting weird. I told her I'd look into it. I even smiled. She had no idea that everything was already unraveling. For a week, I said nothing. I needed space to think, to plan, and most of all, to numb myself before I did anything I couldn't undo. Ashley assumed I was just tired. She still kissed my cheek when she left for work, still hummed while brushing her hair. It was all a show now, a play she didn't know she was starring in. I spent most of my time in the basement office, what used to be the guest room before we had our son. I created a new Tinder profile using someone else's photos and name, just a stocky, generic guy with a warm smile and soft eyes. The kind of man who offered comfort instead of questions. I didn't expect to find her there. Not really. But 3 swipes in, there she was. Different name, different photo, same tattoo on the collarbone. I stared at it like it was a knife slowly turning in my gut. My thumb hovered over the screen before finally tapping right. A few hours later, she matched. Her bio read, "Just looking for someone who listens. No pressure, no judgment." We talked for days. She didn't recognize me, which made it worse somehow. She told me things. Not confessions, but hints. She said she had a complicated home life, that she needed a break sometimes. I asked her what she was looking for in a man, and she responded, kindness, privacy, trust. I stared at that word. Trust, like it was a joke written in blood. On Friday, I asked her to meet, a quiet cafe 2 towns over. She agreed without hesitation. While I waited for the date to arrive, I kept myself busy. I'd already installed a GPS tracker on her car, tucked under the wheel well and connected to my phone. It updated in real time, giving me the route of her daily movements. Some were innocent, grocery stores, yoga studios. Others weren't. One night, while she told me she was visiting a coworker in the hospital, her car sat in the parking lot of a luxury condo for over 4 hours. She left at midnight. I didn't confront her. I took pictures. A friend of mine from college, Matt, owed me more than a few favors. These days, he worked with less than legal tech, and when I explained my situation in careful, vague terms, he didn't ask questions. Within 24 hours, I had access to Ashley's emails, messages, and even her cloud backup. What I found there didn't surprise me, but it still hurt like hell. Photos, Venmo transfers, calendar entries with coded names. But what broke me most was the list in her notes app, clients and their preferred sessions. Some had tags like quick or aggressive next to them. One note simply read, Enrico, every Tuesday. Use candle. No evidence. The words hit harder than any punch could. I printed everything. I organized it into folders labeled by name, date, location. I wasn't just collecting evidence anymore. I was building a timeline. Then I made the call. Child Protective Services answered on the 3rd ring. I gave a tip. Anonymous. Said a woman was running illegal therapy sessions from her house and that a child had been present during one of them. They asked for the address. I gave it. 3 days later, while Ashley was working from home, an agent arrived. I watched from the alley behind our neighbor's fence. I couldn't hear what was said, but I saw her expression when the agent entered the house. She looked nervous. She didn't call me. She didn't even mention it later that night. Just said she was tired and asked if I could tuck our son in for her. The next day, I got a notification from the county site. A preliminary investigation had begun. She was being looked into for unlicensed counseling practices and undeclared income. The pieces were starting to move. I felt nothing, but I wasn't done yet. Using a prepaid phone, I reached out to 2 of the men on her payment list. One responded. He was married. I sent him a video, just a short clip of Ashley answering the door in lingerie. No message. A day later, his wife's name appeared on Facebook as single. I marked him off the list. At night, I barely slept. I lay beside her while she drifted off, thinking about our son, about how none of this was his fault. Sometimes he'd come to our room, half asleep, clutching his dinosaur and asking to climb in bed. I'd hold him between us, my arm around him, my eyes locked on the ceiling, wondering if he would remember any of this someday. Ashley still kissed me goodbye every morning, still packed lunch for our son with little smiley faces drawn on the napkins, still smiled when I rubbed her back while she washed dishes. She didn't know I was already halfway gone. The space across from her office used to be a closed-down yoga studio. Dusty windows, cracked tile floors, forgotten mail shoved through the doorframe. To anyone else, it was useless. To me, it was the perfect vantage point. I signed a month-to-month lease under a fake business name. TL Holdings said I was starting a digital media company. The landlord didn't ask questions as long as the checks cleared. I spent 2 days installing blackout curtains and positioning my gear. A high-resolution camera on a tripod aimed straight at the fifth floor, where her office lights flickered every morning at 8:06. A digital audio recorder with a shotgun mic focused on the open corner window. I'd watched her crack it open for fresh air during her Zoom calls. I knew her schedule better than she did now. I listened. I logged everything. She never saw me. I tracked a pattern. 3 regular male visitors who never used the front entrance. They entered through the side stairwell. None stayed longer than an hour. One of them, Enrico, always left straightening his tie. That part was almost too cliché to stomach, but I needed more than surveillance. One evening while Ashley was out catching up with college friends, her words, I slipped into her office. Not through the door, but through the building's ventilation system. I'd studied the layout for weeks, watched janitorial staff on their cleaning runs, mapped out the gaps between patrols. It took 30 minutes to crawl through the ducts, drop into the hallway, and pick the lock to her suite. I wore gloves, brought a small backpack with tools. I wasn't there to vandalize, I was there to extract. I found a tablet in her drawer, work issued, unlocked. I plugged it into my laptop and dumped everything. Emails, session logs, cloud data. Then I found her black filing box under the desk, the one with the fake, confidential projects label. Inside were handwritten records, appointments, payments, envelopes of cash, a year's worth of names and figures. She wasn't just cheating, she was running a tax-free side hustle in plain sight. I left the office as quietly as I entered. No signs of forced entry, no trace, just an empty water bottle in the stairwell, where I paused to breathe for the first time in hours. The next morning, while Ashley got our son ready for school, I sat at the kitchen island and filled a plain manila envelope. Printed screenshots, payment logs, a copy of the client list. One image of her with a client on the couch. I labeled it plainly, Professional Conduct Inquiry. I slipped it into my messenger bag, drove across town, and delivered it by hand to the state's licensing board office. No return address. Just left it with the receptionist and walked away. 2 days later, she got a letter. I watched her hands tremble slightly as she read it in the kitchen. She didn't mention it. Not a word. That night, she cried in the shower. I heard her. She tried to muffle it under the running water, but I knew the difference between stress and regret. She was finally starting to understand she wasn't in control anymore. I wasn't done. I printed private messages from her tablet, conversations between her and Enrico that made me sick to my stomach. I didn't just read them. I copied them, packaged them, and planned their release. The opportunity came during a client meeting. Ashley was giving a presentation for a wellness retreat proposal. I posed as a delivery courier and slipped a sealed packet into her handbag in the coat room. A USB, a few printed excerpts. Her face when she opened the folder later, mid-meeting, was caught on a public Instagram post from the event photographer. Her smile faded like someone pulled a plug from her spine. That same night, I filed a motion with the court, a financial audit. I claimed she'd hidden significant assets earned from undeclared freelance work. Backed it up with screenshots, bank transfers, and testimony from a confidential informant. One of the jilted men who'd messaged me back and volunteered his side of the story. The court moved faster than I expected. Her accounts were frozen by Thursday. The fallout came slowly like a leak instead of a break. I didn't announce anything. I didn't explode. I simply began removing her from the equation. I changed the passwords to our shared cloud storage, replaced the photo in the hallway frame with one of just our son and me, canceled our joint credit card, and paid off the balance from my personal account. She didn't argue. She didn't dare. One night she tried to initiate intimacy, her voice soft, her hands slow. I flinched like her touch burned. She apologized, whispered something about needing connection. I pretended not to hear and asked her to check on our son. When she came back, I was already in the garage, organizing tools I didn't need. She stood there watching me, then quietly left without another word. I was almost impressed. After everything, she still hadn't figured out how far ahead I was. Every move I made pulled another brick from under her feet. She thought she'd been living 2 lives, but the walls were closing in, and she hadn't noticed the ceiling already caving, and I hadn't even told her we were done. The divorce papers were finalized on a Wednesday morning, signed and stamped before Ashley even knew they existed. I'd filed them weeks ago under grounds of marital fraud and financial concealment, complete with all the supporting evidence the court had quietly collected. She never had a chance to contest them. Not after the freeze, not after the ethics complaint, not after the audit turned up missing income streams and questionable deductions tied to her sessions. She came home that night still pretending things were normal. She greeted our son with a tired smile, ruffled his hair, and asked about dinner. I didn't even look at her. I was too busy finishing the upload. While she reheated leftovers, I sat in the living room with my laptop open, uploading the final pieces to a newly created social media page titled simply, Ashley's Double Life. It wasn't crude or cruel, it was meticulous. Each photo was time-stamped, each video clip watermarked, every file carefully arranged in chronological order. The condo visits, the side door office footage, the payment logs, the messages with Enrico, the booking receipts from her trips. Every detail presented like an exhibit in a courtroom. At 7:03 p.m., I hit publish. I set the page to auto-share on every major platform. Her Facebook, her work group chat, her LinkedIn profile, even the PTA board. The post went live with a single sentence at the top. "This is who Ashley really is." She screamed 20 minutes later, not at me, at her phone, at the screen, at the dozens of incoming notifications that dinged and buzzed and exploded across her accounts in real time. I watched her eyes go wide, then glassy. She tried to log in to delete it all, but I had changed every password an hour before. Our son was already asleep, tucked in after an early movie night and a story I could barely finish reading. The bags were packed. The keys were ready. She just didn't know it yet. A week passed. She lost her job by Friday. The board cited conduct violations and public embarrassment, but they didn't need to explain. Her name had become a punchline in their email threads. By Sunday, she had moved out of the house. I hadn't asked her to. I didn't need to. The lease was in my name. The mortgage, too. I'd made sure of that long ago, back when I still believed in us. I signed the car title transfer the next Monday and sold it the same afternoon. I didn't even care about the value. I just wanted her name off everything. The furniture? Gone. The kitchenware we picked together in that tiny shop on our honeymoon? Donated. I stripped the house of her completely, like a bad dream you refuse to remember. Custody wasn't a battle. With her record shredded, her credibility destroyed, and a child services report attached to her name, the court handed full custody to me in under 15 minutes. She cried at the hearing. Her voice shook when she asked the judge for visitation rights. I didn't even glance at her. A month later, I moved with my son 2 states away into a quiet little town where the only thing louder than the river was the sound of crickets at night. I took a job at a diner on Main Street, cooking 6 days a week. Not glamorous, not prestigious, but steady, honest. I started small. Morning shifts, breakfast rushes, weekend specials. The owner, a Navy vet named Harold, liked that I showed up early and never asked for breaks. Said I had that old school drive. I didn't tell him why. Didn't tell anyone. Every Sunday I cook free meals for the veterans in town. French toast, chili, fried eggs with black pepper bacon. They sit around with stories older than war and laughter that fills every corner of the kitchen. I never talk about what brought me here. I just keep the plates full. At home, the house is small but warm. There's a second-hand sofa and a hand-painted dinosaur mural on my son's wall. We plant tomatoes in the backyard. We race matchbox cars down the hallway. Sometimes we just sit on the porch and listen to the wind move through the trees. Tonight, after dishes were done and pajamas were on, he asked if I'd sit with him for cartoons. He doesn't ask often anymore. He's growing faster than I can slow time. But tonight he did. I poured tea into a chipped ceramic mug, turned off the kitchen light, and put my phone face down on the counter. The screen was still buzzing. Ashley had discovered our new address. She sent messages, voicemails, apologies. I didn't open a single one. Instead, I sat beside my son, pulled the blanket over our legs, and stared at the flickering screen while a cartoon cat chased a cartoon mouse in endless circles. He laughed so hard he snorted. I smiled for the first time in months, and I let the past burn behind me. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.